So I'm Rob Moher. I'm President and CEO of the Conservancy of Southwest Florida. And I'm going to kick this off, and the way we're going to do this is I'll give an overview of teeing up the 20,000-foot perspective, then hand it over to James, CEO of SCCF, who is, James is going to talk a little bit more about the details of the ecological conditions and what we're seeing and why we have problems still. Then we're going to hear from Captain Daniel Andrews, who's obviously been on the front lines of leading advocacy, grassroots advocacy on clean water across the state. And then we'll wrap it up with John Lai, who's the President and CEO of the Sanibel Captiva Chamber of Commerce, to talk about the economic side of this. And then, of course, we'll all be here to answer questions, so looking forward to this. So let me just start with a couple of introductory comments to tee it up. In Southwest Florida, the environment is the economy, right? The region's allure, the prosperity we've enjoyed, are all really deeply rooted in our coastal and inland waters. And clean and healthy waters, they cross all political boundaries and all of the county lines and city lines. Clean water affects every aspect of our lives, from tourism and jobs, recreation, the quality of life, our property values, and of course our own health, as we learned in some of the previous HAB outbreaks. And simply put, our economic and our ecological well-being, they hinge on the quality of these waters. So while there's almost universal agreement that everyone understands that water fuels our economy, our water quality continues to decline. Harmful algae blooms, such as blue-green algae and red tides, continue to decimate our water region. Severe events such as the 2018 bloom disrupted local industry. It marred the natural beauty of our beaches and our rivers, and it raised alarming concerns about the future sustainability of our region. But even without the huge blooms, our area is suffering from small blooms on a far more regular basis. And these smaller blooms all have a cumulative effect as well on our economy and our environment. They also weaken our ecosystem's ability to bounce back and recover from the larger events. So why are we still dealing with harmful algae blooms or HABs and degraded water quality if there's such a clear understanding of the connection with our health and our economy and the quality of our community with the quality of our water? Well, achieving improved water quality, I always equate it's a bit like a Rubik's Cube. You've got to get all the sides lined up in order to solve the puzzle. And in this case, the puzzle is water quality. That means we have to accelerate comprehensive Everglades restoration plans. That means we have to reduce pollution at the source, and we have to hold polluting entities accountable so that there is shared adversity in this. We certainly have to manage growth in a smarter way. Often we think about water and land as separate entities. They are all connected. We have to be minimizing the loss of our valuable wetlands in Southwest Florida, which play such a key role in storing and treating our water in our region. So permitting the unnecessary destruction of wetlands, for example, such as in the massive new developments being proposed in eastern Lee County, such as Kingston, over 6,000 acres, 10,000 new homes, significant impacts to wetlands, or Belmar in East Collier County, which is also going to undergo significant impact to wetlands if it moves forward. Those types of developments are going to weaken our ecological infrastructure that helps us with achieve clean water. So while we intuitively understand this connection between nutrient loading HABs and our water quality, until today, we've not really had a detailed economic assessment of the impact across our region. So let me just give you a quick sense of why we did this report. To address this growing concern, the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, along with Captains for Clean Water and the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation, joined together to fund this study and hired a top-notch, nationally significant firm, Green Economics, to conduct a thorough analysis of the economic repercussions of degraded water quality. So this pivotal study translates this impact into tangible economic figures, offering a clear perspective of all the stakes involved. So as expected, the studies paints a pretty grim picture of the potential economic fallout from poor water quality. A repeat of the catastrophic events from 2006 or 2018 could lead to a very substantial downturn in our economic sectors. We are talking about impacts in the hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. An event like we saw in 2018 would spell disaster for our commercial and recreational fishing industries, which could lose just that one industry $460 million. Furthermore, the region could face a drastic decline in property values totaling upwards of $17.8 billion. Over 43,000 people could face job losses if another HAB occurred, such as 2018. There'd also be significant impacts to the value of outdoor recreation, the ability to walk on a beach or kayak in a river without getting sick. And those are just a few highlights from the study. So we're going to invite you to take a copy of the executive summary, which we have here. We also have a QR code that will link you to the full study if you really want to get into the details. So in summary, the findings of the report are dire, and they are something that should serve as a wake-up call to the public, to elected officials, to community leaders. More has to be done holistically to address the root causes of HABs, to restore our region to a more sustainable form of economic, ecological, and community resilience. And look, everyone who lives here and loves this community should be frustrated that we're still dealing with these issues, should be motivated and mobilized. We really can't afford to wait any longer. We don't want to wait till the next big one hits us and then have that type of reaction. We need to be proactive in driving solutions. So I'm going to turn this over to James Evan, who has done a lot of work in his role as CEO of SCCF and advocating and doing some of the science to talk a little bit more about the impacts. So James?
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm James Evans, CEO of the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation. I'm just so proud to be standing here today on this rainy day in Fort Myers with our partners, with the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, Captains for Clean Water, and the Sanibel Captiva Chamber of Commerce. Of course, here in Southwest Florida, we are no stranger to water quality issues or the impacts of red tide or other harmful algal blooms that impact our quality of life, our ecology, and our local economy. And the study that is being presented today really quantifies the economic impacts that these harmful algal blooms and the other water quality issues that we are dealing with here in Southwest Florida have on our local economy. A recent research conducted by the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation's Marine Lab, along with the University of Florida Center for Coastal Solutions, makes a direct connection between the releases from Lake Okeechobee and the runoff from the Coosatchee watershed and our surrounding watersheds, recognizing that the nutrients that come off of our landscapes, whether it's coming off of our lawns or coming off of our septic systems or other areas that generate nutrients, we know that those nutrients exacerbate red tide blooms. We're familiar with the science. Red tide blooms aren't caused by what we do on the landscapes, but they do get bigger, they get more intense, and their duration can be extended because of these nutrients that come into our watersheds. And so what this study does is it puts a number, a dollar amount, on the economic impacts of the nutrients that we are sending to the coast and the impacts to poor water quality. With Lake Okeechobee currently sitting at 16 feet, 16.12 feet today, and the regulatory releases from Lake Okeechobee looming, we continue to be concerned. And this study gives us the data that we need to reach out to our policymakers, to reach out to our water managers, and give them real numbers on what the economic impacts could be from regulatory releases into our coastal waters. We know full well what happened in 2018 and what happened in 2005 and 6 when we saw dead fish scattered along our beaches. In 2018, we had a 26-foot-long whale shark that washed up on the beaches of Sanibel. We had 425 tons of dead marine life that had to be cleaned up from Sanibel's beaches and throughout Lee County. This study, again, provides the insights into the economic impacts that could occur with a future event. We must move swiftly to complete Everglades restoration and the projects necessary to move more water south where it's desperately needed, instead of sending that water, those damaging releases, to the coasts. We need to stop developing the wetlands that are the kidneys that treat water that runs off of our watersheds and into our coastal communities. Our ecosystems and our quality of life and our local economy depend on it. And as you read in this study, we have real numbers that demonstrate the need for our policymakers and our water managers to take action. And so I'll keep my comments brief today, but I just want to underscore the need to continue to build on this. This is a building block. This is not the last study that will be done on the economic impacts of water quality. This is the first. And I'm just so proud to be here with our partners from Captains for Clean Water, Conservancy of Southwest Florida, and the Sanibel Captiva Chamber of Commerce to present that data to you today and to continue building that economic case for protecting Southwest Florida's coastal resources. Thank you.
Thank you, James. It's great to be here today with the kickoff of this study, the launch of it. And I just want everybody to know that this study we didn't just press a button and it popped out. There was a lot of hard work that went into this over the course of many years. That work happened not because a couple folks said, hey, we're going to do this. It happened because our organizations came together and said, we need this. The communities need to understand these economic impacts. And I want to thank Jessica Pinsky from our team. She's our policy director, but also really spearheaded this project. She's just making me come up here and talk, but she's the one from Captains that did the work on it. Michelle at the Conservancy was really a project manager on this and put an incredible amount of work in. I can't thank you enough. James and the SCCF crew as well, just everybody coming together, all the calls that happened over the course of several years. Again, it wasn't because any reason besides the fact that we said, look, we need this. People need to understand this economic impact of this issue. And that partnership, that collaboration between organizations that's represented here today is something that did not exist. And as I got out of bed this morning and used my windshield wipers once again in January, which is not something we typically do here in Florida, it started to bring back flashbacks of 2016, 8 years ago. At the time, I was a 24-year-old fishing guide that had a completely full schedule and thought that was going to be the way it was for the rest of my career. And just a few short weeks later, we were getting billions of gallons of polluted water from Lake Okeechobee discharged out of the Franklin locks into our community here, and it completely shut my business down. And the perspective that I have from this issue, and that I had at the time as a fishing guide was a lot different. I didn't see the volumes that, say, Doc Ford's did as clients, and certainly didn't have the macro perspective that this study represents. But I was stuck on an 18-foot boat with my clients for 12 hours at a time, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 days in a row. And the perspective that you get of the individual that works their tail off all year to take 1 week of vacation and bring their family down here and see these estuaries, you don't get that perspective waiting on a table for an hour. You don't get that perspective from being a hostess on an airliner that's dealing with folks on the way down or greeting somebody at a hotel. You form intimate relationships with folks that love this area just as much as we all do. And that perspective, hearing those stories of folks that stopped coming here after 20, 30 years, maybe multiple generations of vacationing this area, they go out on the beach and there's dead fish. They go out on a fishing charter and they're not able to breathe because of the red tide. That's not a future that any of us want for ourselves, for our kids, for future generations here. And it was really what got me involved with this effort. And really early on, seeing that collaboration, seeing that understanding of how all these different entities, from traditional environmental groups to the business community to chambers of commerce and conservationists, anglers and hunters, all coming together saying we want the same thing. We want clean water. We want the ability to go outside and just enjoy what nature provides for each and every one of us. And although this study represents billions of dollars of economic impact that this can have, negative impact that this can have on our communities, the ability to go out on the beaches here with family, with friends, with loved ones, with your kids, and just enjoy a sunset without having to deal with dead, rotten fish washing up, without having to smell red tide, the pungency with every inhale you make, there is no price tag you can put on that. That's the reason that every single one of us lives here in Southwest Florida. We're here because we like the water. We're here because we want to get out and enjoy something that the rest of the country doesn't get to. Where everybody down here is a half-hour ride from the beach. We like the local seafood. They serve a lot of it, great stuff here at Dock Forge that comes, shrimp boats are right here behind us. And that is something that's very unique to this area that, and it's kind of thinking back of years of working on this study to get this economic impact. This morning as I drive down here, there is no way you can really quantify that. Although we've tried, although it shows the economy as a whole, which is what our policymakers need to hear, what Southwest Florida as a whole needs. Just want to remind everybody that the price of happiness of being able to get out there and just enjoy the resource, enjoy the ability we have to access that on a day-to-day basis. There's no amount of billions or trillions that can ever make up for spending your time out here, because that's what brings us here. That's what we love. Again, I just want to thank everybody for being here today. The amount of progress that's been made in the last 8 years, not just on the policy side. 8 years ago, when you asked somebody, when those discharges in 2016 started, when you asked somebody, do you know why these problems are happening? They didn't. There was almost zero community awareness of why these problems were happening. And even more importantly, almost zero awareness that there were science-based solutions that have been on the table for 2 decades, and little to no progress had been made on that. And Captains for Clean Water started with a belief that if everybody knew about these problems and the science-based solutions that existed to solve them, they would have already been solved. And that was our mission from day one, was just raising that level of awareness and getting in people's face and reminding them that if they're not aware of this, if they're not communicating on it, if it's not part of their daily conversation, these problems aren't going to be fixed. And that inspired folks, and that it was a collaboration. It wasn't what our organization did. It wasn't what any single organization did. It was that coalition of a bunch of different folks that have never came together in history to say enough is enough and we're going to do something about it. Today marks the quantification of that impact and the next level of advocacy, of education, of awareness that you're going to see from all of our organizations. Unfortunately, as James mentioned, the lake at 16.12 feet this morning, over 10 billion gallons of water fell in that lake yesterday alone. That's not good. That's very high for the lake for this time of year. It's something we're concerned about, but it also is a time to pause and reflect about since 2018, the years that have passed since then without having a major water crisis is pretty remarkable, because we had 2013, 2016, 2018 all back to back. That I think that's what it took to get people motivated on this issue. But because of the advocacy that's happened since then, we've been able to avoid a crisis for this long. However, until that water can flow south from Lake Okeechobee all the way down to Florida Bay, until we stop destroying our own local watershed here, until all these things happen, we're at risk for this happening again. And as long as we're at risk for this happening again, we will not go away. All of our organizations are committed to seeing this through. Thanks very, very much for being here today. I'd like to welcome John Lai up, the president and CEO of the Sanibel Captiva Chamber of Commerce, wonderful ally in the fight. Thank you, John.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. As Daniel said, my name is John Lai. I'm the president and CEO of the Sanibel Captiva Chamber of Commerce. And if you were to go to our site right now, our website, that millions of people go to every single year as we try to get them down to our beautiful islands, you'll see that our tagline states that it's not perfect as we rebuild from Hurricane Ian. It's not perfect, but it's still paradise. And we can say that with conviction and a sense of hope, not because of the great restaurants and the great hotels and the great retailers that we have out there, but because of what is on and around our islands and the natural resources that we benefit from each and every single day. Water quality is at the top of that list, and that's why at our Chamber of Commerce, you'll see water quality is our #1 legislative priority every single year in perpetuity. We've made that commitment, and we know that is the one thing, even having gone through a Category 4.9 hurricane, we know that that's the one thing that can derail our business community to a point where it cannot return. And so I just want to say a huge thank you to the partners in the room today, SCCF, Captains for Clean Water, and the Conservancy, for your collaboration, your efforts on making this number quantifiable, not only so that we can tell our lawmakers what these numbers are, the 43,000 jobs, these are real people, these are their constituents in our communities, that their jobs are at risk when water quality goes south. Didn't mean that literally. Of course, we want the water to go south, but when water quality degrades, 43,000 jobs are at risk. And so we know that we have a large number of residents and a large number of business owners and investors that are coming into our communities here on these islands. And so they weren't here for 2016, 2017, 2018. We need to be able to educate them on why we fight for water quality the way that we do. And this is a tool in our toolbox that will allow us to do that in a manner that we weren't before. And so when we went through those water quality issues in 2016, 2017, 2018, we saw our paradise in peril. And we are so excited to be able to step into this new season of being able to protect paradise and really show the economic impacts that water quality has, not just on our region, but in our state. You may or not know that $101 billion is what visitors brings to Florida every single year. And so when we look at these numbers impacting our region, if we multiply that out by our state, it's a much bigger issue. And so thank you for taking the first step as CCF captains and the Conservancy. And I'm so excited to be able to share these numbers with everyone that we know. I'd like to bring up Jessica Pinsky at this time, and thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, John. Before I bring all of the CEOs and policy staff from our three organizations up, I just want to give a shout out to Marty Harity, owner of Doc Ford's. He was here in the crowd. He's walking around working, but for allowing us to use this facility to have this press conference at. And just so you know, Marty and that guy, Mark Anderson, raise your hand, Mark, Benchmark. Yeah, those guys have been fighting for this study for a long time. So thank you for paving the road for us to do this. Really appreciate that. Now, if I could have James and Matt and Rob and Michelle, Daniel, all come up here. We're going to take some Q&A from the press, and just want to make sure we have everybody up here. Great. Okay, yeah, wink. First up.
All the numbers you guys got back, and I can hear from each of you or one of you, what was the most shocking? Was it jobs? Was it property value? Was it?
Michelle, do you want to take this first one?
Sorry. No, that's okay. Probably the most shocking number to me was the jobs. 43,000 jobs regionally. That is a huge number from one event. And that could be exacerbated if the event lasts longer. So that was probably the biggest shock to me.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, I saw we had, oh, hi, Amy.
Just wanted to follow up on the jobs question. That was the one that really got my attention as well. Of course, the numbers are astronomical. But which of these sectors, I mean, are we talking hotel people, restaurant people? Which particular sector takes the biggest hit of those 43,000 jobs?
I'm not sure about the technical. It is in the report. Do you know off the top of your head, Michelle?
Which
sector specifically?
So the numbers all kind of blend because you're looking at a variety of different sectors and sources. So I would really have to look in that specific area. We didn't really break it down by, say, hotel versus restaurant. So there were the different sectors. We broke it down by fishing. One's connected to outdoor recreation, and so I will be happy to get back with you on that one, but I'll have to look that one up specifically. Thank you.
And the thing with that is, some of these numbers in here, the property value loss is $17.8 billion. It's a lot of money. But having to let somebody go from a job, it really sucks. Having to do that 43,000 times from one event, can you imagine? Like, there are literally decisions being made today in Tallahassee and Washington that determine the future of this estuary, and they're removed from that impact. But imagine that, having to fire 43,000 people and the impact that has on their personal life, on their families, because of something that is in our control. All these other billions of dollars, it doesn't matter when you think of the impact that has on families.
Yeah, I was going to echo what Daniel said. I mean, it's a domino effect, right? When someone loses their job, the whole family's affected, the community's affected. And so, the thing that really concerns me about these numbers, and the study does go into this, and you can take a look at it, and this is what we saw previously. It's one thing to have one major economic HAB event, right? What happens if two happen in 18 months or 24 months? Throw a hurricane in the middle of that. Those types of collective events happening within a 3-year time span, the ability to recover from that, it really gets much more challenging, right? Think of if you're an independent business owner. You can recover from one thing maybe if you have 6 months to get back on your feet, you get some government support, help like FEMA or something like that. But with HABs, you don't get those types of comprehensive support. And if you have multiple HAB events happening within a 2-3 year period of time, then you have this compounding effect, which is even harder to recover from. So then you see the sustained job loss. Those jobs are not coming back as fast, perhaps if it's just an isolated event. And until we fix the fundamental pieces of the infrastructure, and as James said, until we really get a handle, not just on these Everglades restoration projects, but on our own watershed, we've got to look in our own backyard of the patterns of development and what are we doing to contribute to this problem, and more importantly, then what can we do to solve them? So I think that's where we're all focused on.
Yes, Liz.
Yeah. I was just for Matt. I'm curious, what do you think is the largest obstacle stopping us from achieving these goals and keeping the picture up top and not the one on the bottom?
Yeah, I think that the largest obstacle that prevents us from achieving these goals is really getting people on board and getting people educated and understanding that these are decisions that are being made by people that are being reflected in our ecosystems behind us. These are decisions being made that without numbers like this, without people being educated and understanding the impact of the ramifications of these releases, of these nutrient additions, then it's really easy to make decisions that say, well, let's just have another season that's similar to the one we just had, because there's no direct line and direct correlation to the decisions being made in Tallahassee that are being seen down here. I think that once we have studies like this, more studies in the future, when we have some of those studies that came out a few years ago, like with our partners at UF, that show that these are decisions that are being made by individuals who are making the choices that reflect the nutrient addition to the ecosystem that exacerbates these red tides, that exacerbate these harmful algal blooms. Once we can point fingers and say, listen, this is exactly what you're doing, and now we have this study that shows not only is this the outcome of the decision you're making, these are the people directly that you're harming because of that decision. I think once more of that comes out, we'll be able to get more people on board, because I think a lot of it does come back to a lack of education, or at the very least people being able to say, oh, I didn't know that at the time I was making this. But the more solid data and science that we have, the less they're going to be able to say ignorance as an option. I think, too, it's really important to remember that this study is conservative. This study shows a reflection of the quantifiable data that we have today. And there's a lot of stuff that's left out of this study. The human health impacts, the large-scale ecosystem impacts, destruction of fisheries and wetlands, and other things that are associated with these harmful algal blooms that just aren't able to be captured with the scope of this study. So when we're looking at these numbers, remember that this is just scratching the surface. There's huge unseen damages as well that aren't yet reflected.
To your getting people on board answer, other than the awesome power of the press, what are the plans for getting this information in front of policymakers and office holders and elected officials? What's next?
James, you want to take this one?
Sure. As you know, we're just at the beginning of the legislative session, so we're hoping that our policymakers are listening today, recognizing that some of the legislation that's being put out there actually will silence the voice of the people, doing things that will limit our ability to comment on whether it's water management district permits or DEP permits, legislation that transfers attorney's fees to parties that lose a challenge to something that might protect our environment. I really hope that our legislators are listening and that they take this to heart, and that we are doing things that are best for the long-term economic benefit of our local economy here in Southwest Florida or throughout Florida, instead of looking at short-term benefits such as development, increase impervious surfaces, sending that runoff from our watersheds after you develop a wetland into our coastal areas. Similar to what we're experiencing in Cape Coral right now. The press was covering the flooding this morning. That water that runs off the landscape is going to go somewhere, and that somewhere is our coastal waters. And the coastal waters that are receiving those waters are going to have excess nutrients that could be available to harmful algal blooms such as blue-green algae or red tide. So the actions that we take on our landscapes, whether it's developing our watersheds and our wetlands, those have direct impacts on our water quality. So all of the decisions that we make on our own properties, and of course the decisions that are made by our legislators, have an impact on our quality of life and our water quality. So I think it's important that all of you, including everyone standing here in this room, reach out to your legislators, reach out to your county commissioners, reach out to the people that are making decisions for you, and let them know how you feel and what you want the future of Southwest Florida to look like.
And thank you for that question, Amy. And I think when everybody wakes up tomorrow and gets their news press and it's the front page, full page feature on this study day after tomorrow, maybe the whole front section can be on this. No, so it's being here at Doc Ford's, it's this issue gets solved in that community conversation until people are eating their Yucatan shrimp tacos and saying, "Oh, hey, did you hear about this? Oh yeah, no, I heard about that." And until it's that common, and that's what I tell our team all the time. Your target is to get the parent who's at the grocery store with kids running around going crazy, screaming, to wake them up when they're in the middle of the grocery shop, because you see it, everybody flipping through Instagram at the grocery store, until you can get in their mind and hammer how important this is and share the imagery of the destruction that's happened. This is a losing battle, but we've crossed that bridge, and the organizations represented today from the Chamber of Commerce, SCCF, the Conservancy, our own team at Captains, there's a tremendous amount of work being done to get this study disseminated in ways that people can understand. And I know that's a commitment we've all made internally to get this out. Another reminder, being here at Doc Ford's, there was a horrendous bill that was filed in Tallahassee a couple of years back, Senate Bill 2508. It was actually vetoed in the room that was destroyed by Hurricane Ian right over here. But it took, just from our own social media efforts, I believe, Alicia, what was the number? It was 10, 12 million people that we reached during that fight. And that's what it takes to be effective and to be successful. And it takes that collaboration with a lot of different organizations. It's not about any one of us or even just these organizations represented here. It's about how we can get this beyond the circles here to where folks all over the country see this, because ultimately Everglades restoration is a state-federal partnership, and it takes that investment. And I'm looking forward to seeing the front page of the news press the day after tomorrow.
Hard to follow those comments. But I would say, Daniel talked about it, but data visualization is really important. So I think you'll see more of that coming out of this report as we have more time to synthesize those numbers so that you can look at it in a snapshot form that has impact, that has a visual ease of reading, like an infographic. So we're all committed to that, translating the technical into the understandable. So that's another part of this commitment of the partner organizations here. And I would say, as James mentioned, there's some horrible pieces of legislation already starting to move through Tallahassee. Now this becomes another argument for pushing back against those things and And Daniel mentioned the local control issue. You know, if local cities and counties cannot manage their own ordinances because they're preempted by the state of Florida, or if the burden for citizen action is cut down and so burdensome that no citizen or association can take on a development that's happening in their backyard because you will have to pay the opposing attorney's fees, those are absolute killers for citizen participation. And I hope that the Floridians that are going to hear this story understand that these types of legislation also contribute to the problems we're dealing with here with water quality. People need to be pushing back in a fair way, and when the playing field is tilted against you, as it has been continually tilted and tilted, it's going to be tougher and tougher. So that means our message has to be more aggressive, and it means that we have to tag these billions of dollars that politicians sometimes understand better onto existing legislative things happening right now in Tallahassee. So I think those two things of data visualization, summarization, getting it out through the social media channels, the partner organizations, we'll also have this information distilled on all of our relevant websites, so you'll all be able to get it there. So, and through the news, obviously. So we hope the word gets out.
Okay, Michelle, who is our project manager for the study with Conservancy, she's going to wrap us up with a couple of comments about where we'll further dive into this study.
Short girl problems. So that was a great question, Amy. So probably the next big thing that we're going to do with this study is that the annual Everglades Coalition Conference is being hosted locally here in Bonita Springs, and that is the 25th through the 27th of this month. Daniel, along with James, John Lai, and then the principal economist from Green Economics, and one other up-and-coming environmental economist, Chloe Versyth, will be hosting a panel at the Everglades Coalition Conference. It will be the opening panel on Friday morning at 9 a.m. So we will be talking about the study and well as other economic impacts here in Southwest Florida related to water quality. And then we will also be taking this to Tallahassee the first week of February, and right now we're trying to get meetings together so we can actually hand them a copy and have a conversation about the importance of this study and the environment and water quality to our region.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.